very much, Sean, for the introduction. My last name is actually pronounced Bowyer. We are the bow makers of Europe for many, many years. So, first of all, thank you for the introduction. Tina, thank you very much for organising this. I think it's been great. It's something that we need. Okay?
Speak like one.
It would be nice to have a mic like a little bit. Okay, so for me, a little bit about myself. I am 53 years old, which means Gary Caffel, one of my candidates I'm running against, actually coached me in rugby when I was at Mayoral College, okay? So I did 5 years at Mayoral College. My children have gone there as well. I've lived in the town for 12 years, and my wife Leah and I have had property within the district boundary for over 20 years, okay? Why am I running for council? Okay, council in the Mayoral because I care. I care about the community and I care about this town. I have in the last few years become disappointed with the way council has been. It's become quite acrimonious at times. There's been a lot of stuff on social media which I think is not good, especially there's been some stuff in the last 10, 12 days, okay? And stuff like that I don't condone. So I want us to change, okay? And part of that change for me is the change of culture. At the moment, the public just don't seem to trust council, okay? We're talking transparency, trust and honesty. So that's lacking at the moment, and if we can just change that, and through changing the culture, we can then bring out the capabilities of the councillors, newly elected or previous councillors, whatever. We can get those capabilities out, then we can look at growth. Capability, culture and growth. It's a really simple success triangle. And for me, growth in the Wairarapa at the moment is we need to celebrate a few things, okay? Because at the moment, council seems to be part of the problem, whereas council need to be part of the solution. So for me, we need to celebrate agriculture. This town is a rural, regional economy, so we need to celebrate our agriculture. Not just the golden shears, the jewel in the crown, but all agriculture, okay? We also need to celebrate our arts and our entertainment. Not just Aratoi, but I'm talking entertainment and making sure we can get out and have a summer program, something for people to look forward to. We've been quite constrained with COVID over the last few years, so we need to build on that and get a mojo back. And for me, the last one that we need to celebrate is our air show. We actually have, in the Wairarapa here, the premium collection of World War I aircraft, okay? We have an air show coming up in February. Borders are open, we're going to get a lot of people here. So if we as a town and businesses can get together, we can do very well out of that, okay? So I've campaigned on really just a couple of things. And for me, they are the town hall. I'm in favour of the town hall being built on its current site. We need to have a real talk with the Amateur Theatre Society and see what that looks like going forward. There needs to be a real discussion. We haven't had a town hall for a while, so we need to be very aware of that. The library as well, for me, we own the land, let's build it on that, okay? We also need to, the other thing I've campaigned on is I am a no for Three Waters, okay? I believe this town will just get lost in the clamour for funds from central government. Local people know local water, okay? So I'm a big advocate that we need to do better with local stuff. And we do need to find more funding from central government.
30 seconds.
That is dead right. So for me, there is a choice for you this year. You can rearrange the deck chairs if you so want, or you can vote Bowyer for mayor and council and get Masterton the way you want it. Thank you.
Craig, thank you very much. Have a seat here, Craig. Grab a drink and take a seat. We will have questions later. Craig Bowyer there. Great name. Thank you very much. Now, if my alphabet is right, the next candidate who has 5 minutes is Bill. And I'm going to mess up this, isn't it? Izzard. Did I get that right? Izzard. Jeez, I'm having a tough time.
Or as Helen Capuscio said,
Izzard. Bill, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
thank you, everybody. This is quite an entertaining way to introduce myself back to town after leaving 18 years ago. We moved up to Waikato because I was chased out of town in Masterton at that stage. I had large factories here, working with Alcatel as the main subcontractor until National pulled the plug in 1996. 8,000 people were made unemployed when the car import tariffs dropped on. And then I had this engineering firm, but I wanted to get into property trading. Couldn't find room here in Masterton, so I moved up to Waikato. And we spent 18 years up there, and we did quite well with property up there, and then came back, had a big time with Rotary. I'm a Rotary person. I've been a Rotary person on and off for about 30 years. So I'm happy with helping communities and dealing with councils and that sort of thing. We had one daughter. She's having children now, and she lives in Upper Hutt. So my wife, who's not particularly well, decided that we moved back to Masterton. So there I was stuck in a little house in Essex Street, wondering what the hell I was going to do. And I called Irene, the reporter, what's her name, the political reporter at the Times Age, and I said, can you write a story about me wanting to be a councillor? She said, no, we don't do stories on councillors. So the next day I said, well, stop it, I'll be a mayor. So they did a story on me, and so I had a play on my name, which is William Izzard. Spells W.Izzard. It sounds a bit silly, but the idea is to try and get people who probably don't attend these sort of meetings to actually vote for me. But as far as my business experiences, I started manufacturing back in the 1980s with my father. We built a very large company called Izzard Manufacturing. We had nearly 500 staff and had a worldwide company, and we lived all over the world. I've been a managing director, CEO and chairman of quite a few different organisations over my years, including having my own factories here in Masterton, and later on investing in properties and things like that. So I'm a pilot. Roger knows me very well. We did a lot of grounding work with people skills, I suppose, back in the good old Aero Club days. And then you had all so the airfield was probably quite a good grounding for me, even back in sport and vintage days. So some of the earliest air shows were actually gold coin donation air shows back in the early 90s. So that was, I've been quite passionate about that. But while in the Waikato, I spent a lot of time as a citizen of Waipa and getting to know all the councillors there, made a lot of submissions into the Waikato and Waikato region, and we lived in a small town called Kiki, and we upgraded that town. Now it's a funky little village now, from versus being a backwater, forgotten place. Going back to my days in Masterton, I was with Bob Francis on the Business Enterprise Board, and we did quite a few proactive things. I'd like to carry that on if I became mayor, get into back in business enterprise boards and fire up the retail sector of this downtown, because they need a lot more support and ideas to grow out of the joint meetings and stuff. So I'm used to dealing with a lot of people, not frightened of speaking. That's what Rotary teaches you to do. So here I am. I haven't got a wand with me tonight. My wife said I wasn't allowed to turn up looking like a wizard. So I'm not a wizard. It's actually just my simple name. But I do believe that like the civic centre,
30 seconds.
30 seconds, no. There's a whole lot of no's, like the council is like a no-no sort of council too, so well, let's clean it all up, and thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Bill. Now there's no way I can stuff up this next surname. So I'd like you to give a warm welcome, please, to our next mayoral candidate, Joe Hayes. Joe, the floor is yours and your time starts now.
Kia ora and good evening everybody. I am absolutely delighted to stand here and introduce myself to you. I'm of Rangitane and Ngāti Kahanunu descent. Look at me. I came here to be the General Manager for Rangitane Post-Settlement Treaty Organisation. And then when this opportunity came up, I said I could do this because I bring with me a skill that none of the other candidates have. I have central government experience. I was a former Member of Parliament for the National Party as a list MP, and I have come here because I want to share with you the skills and the connections that I have as your Mayor from after the 8th of October. And with that, I also bring with my connections to iwi. One of the things I noted when I was General Manager for Rangitane is this council does not have a partnership with iwi. And I can tell you, this is an iwi that will own quite significant parts of this area of Wairarapa. Now, Rangitane got 36 million cash in their claim. Ngāti Kahanunu will get 115 million. And as a council, we want them to spend their money here. And as a mayoral candidate, as a future mayor for your Masterton, for our Masterton district, I want to work with them, of which I've already said to them, should I become the mayor, I will be coming to talk to you about how we can invest in Masterton district, because it's really important. Amounts of money like that don't fall out of a tree that easily. But you need to have the connections to do it. You need to have the relationships. Which brings me to my next area. Relationships are a key and vital part of being a mayor. I sit on with Tina, the joint planning, district planning group, and we're planning, and you'll see it coming out very shortly. We've already released some public relations on it, some information on what we're planning for all of the 3 councils into the future. Masterton will be significant in that. And why will it be significant? Because you are the largest council, you have the most population, and you should have a big say in what's going to happen here in the Wairarapa. It's something that you all need to go home and have a think about who can best do that. And I believe I am the person that can best represent you here at a local level. And many of you will say, well, so what? She whakapakas here. This is her family. I was actually born in Ekatahuna. When people said to me in Parliament, where were you born? And I said, Ekatahuna, they thought I was joking. And they said, oh, people say that all the time. I said, no, I was actually born in Ekatahuna. And my parents, my mother, she is a Kraitiana. Big family out of Ākura. Once upon a time, Ākura used to have all of the lands around Masterton. I have learned so much about the base of where I come from, my Māori heritage. Another area that I want to talk about with relationships is a relationship with business. I come from a farming background. I know the compliance issues that farmers are going to be facing in the future. Everything to do with he waka eke law, we're all in the same boat. That's the ones around the environmental standards and what James Shaw's pushing. So farmers are going to have an environmental plan by 2024, and we need, as a council, to be able to support them to make sure that we have an environmental plan for this district, as well as supporting our farmers so they can be successful. Success, ladies and gentlemen, is the key to making Masterton grow its potential. If any of you have seen the movie Boy, you will hear him talk about potential. Potential is what Masterton has and it hasn't been tapped. Every single one of you could be a business owner. We need to have Airbnbs here because we need to attract people here to spend their money. And I just want to say, in closing, in order to do that, you need somebody who can connect with the people, who can connect with the businesses, who can connect with the farmers. I do all of that. 3 Waters, out the door. We don't want that. We want to run our own 3 Waters. And yeah, it might not be the best at the moment, but I tell you what, with me as Mayor, it's going to be one of the best 3 Water programs that you will see. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jo. And last, because, and her name I won't get wrong, last because that's the alphabetical order, is Tina Nixon. Tina, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Just a little bit of background about me. I came to find the Wairarapa about 20 years ago and came over and started staying with some friends of mine who lived up in Bideford. Previous to that, I had quite a varied career. Started off as a prison social worker. I've been a journalist. What else have I done? Press secretary in Parliament, so I'm a bit like Jo. I've quite a lot of experience around government. I've held a number of senior posts in government and government departments, probably about 7 government departments, I suppose, over the time of my career. I have had, in the last 5 or 6 years, considerable governance experience on probably about 6 companies in my time, and currently sit on about 3. I also sit on 2 Māori trusts that are involved in Southland. One is the largest private property owner on Stewart Island and is involved in tourism. The other is the Tauma species of Ngaitahu, because I am Ngaitahu, and that's the mutton bird, or the titi. And so we're involved at the moment in a $70 million research program around sustainability of titi. So I suppose I'm one of those people who has quite a broad amount of experience across a whole heap of sectors. I think in terms of Masterton, it's undoubtedly the sweet spot of New Zealand with good country values and an emerging sophistication that comes with a growing population that demands good amenities and facilities. We need strong leadership to ensure we maintain the competitive advantage amongst regions clamouring for new residents. First, in terms of just a bit of background around my family too, which are here to support me tonight, and I must admit I needed their support in the last couple of weeks after some of you will have seen a brochure that appeared in some letterboxes and also a bit of a sustained attack on social media. So my son over there is Matthew. He's just come out of Papua New Guinea, he flies helicopters, and my partner over there is David Hayes, and he's the manager of the airport, and that's a conflict that I manage very carefully, just in case there's anyone in the room who wants to challenge that. So I'd just like to say that it's my grandparent and my grandkids that really keep me focused on the future of this district. They fuel my desire to use all my life experiences and skill to help foster a strong team of councillors to navigate us through these uncertain times and protect our advantage and strengthen and add a new vibrancy to our future. Our long-term plan is seriously out of kilter due to the fast-moving reforms and fast-rising inflation. And so much has changed in our world, how we work, how we communicate, and our rising need to physically connect again in community spaces post-COVID. So out of that uncertainty comes an opportunity to be brave and take a step outside the normal restrictions of council planning processes. I'm an advocate for getting all of the leaders in both council and across the community and in businesses to come together and work on a community plan for Masterton. My aim is to develop a strategy for our time by developing a clear focus on the most needed facilities, a clear funding path, and a sequenced rollout of projects over time, which could be 10 to 15 years. It will take the best of our LTP, the passion behind some of the community projects like the theatre project, and a willing community to make this happen. And we need to find as much external funding as possible. Imagine a CBD with spaces to congregate, right-sized amenities fit for generations where people can connect. The other issue that we really need to face head-on is water resilience and water storage. While the focus of much of the conversation has been on Three Waters, the game's much bigger than that. We can't lose sight of the need for water storage. I was on the board of Wairarapa Water, so I understand many of the economic benefits of water storage, but a recent NEWA report has sharpened the focus of many working in this space as it shapes the case for water storage just to maintain our current way of life. So water storage is not needed or will help advance our economic cause, but the NEWA report clearly indicates that we're going to have a shortage of water and we're just going to need it to maintain our current position.
30 seconds.
We also need to work with our fellow councillors up in Hawke's Bay who understand all this water stuff much better than us, and I have those sort of connections. We have many issues as we do around the country, and the new council will need a clear focus not only on the fix to reduce the double impact of climate change and ageing pipes, but mitigation measures for people whose problems won't be fixed by pipes. To make good decisions means that we need good councillors. I have led big teams up and down the country with large successes around tourism and conservation and in other areas as well. So I think that in terms, in conclusion, and sometimes in your life it's your time. It's my time to lead a new council through a myriad of changes, a mayor who can challenge and negotiate to our advantage with government, who has strong governance skills and the experience of working in challenging environments, who will always put people's needs first and has a passion and a love of this place that my whole family calls our Masterton, our home.
Thank you, Tina. Standing and delivering tonight, we're now going to have a session where you can ask questions of our mayoral candidates. I do just want to clarify one thing mentioned by some of you, and I just want to get the answer clear from each of you individually. Three Waters as proposed by the government, yes or no? Tina? No?
No.
Joe, no? No. No? No, that's 4 no's. Okay, we have cleared that one up.
Now, the candidate that's not here tonight, but ambiguous.
Well, let's not talk for the candidate who's not here. Let them not talk for themselves. Yeah. Anyone else got any questions on anything for the people who want to be your mayor? And I guess the candidates for council can ask the mayoral candidates questions as well. It's an open forum. Do you have something, Hugh?
I do. I mean, 4 candidates are saying no to Three Waters. If the government legislates, we get Three Waters. So why are you saying, what are we supposed to take from you saying no? You're not going to take over the government and cancel it. It's going to come.
We can all say yes.
It sounds like grandstanding.
All right, does anyone want to speak to that, or all of you want to speak to that?
Saying no to Three Waters, from my perspective, has been a reasonably long journey. I started with bringing a notice of motion to council to join 31 other councils who did not support Three Waters, and out of that council has come an alternative plan. So I'm also involved in a water users group, which is bringing legal action courtesy of Stephen Franks, which is going through the courts at the moment. So when I say stop, we need to stop Three Waters, we have come up with an alternative proposal that if this government goes out, we will have a workable plan that gives much more onus on the local community to have a say in its own assets, and a really good funding model which will also allow us to do the work that needs to be done. So yes, we're still saying no to Three Waters because we still don't know what the legal action is going to come out with. It's looking at a number of quite technical aspects of the current bill. And to be fair, I was at the select committee 3 times, and I have never, ever seen a bill go through the House like this that has had so much negative submissions. And so it's going to be extremely interesting how the government's going to handle this. Some things are still in train, but I'd be very, very surprised if we see the Three Waters and the 4 entities in their current form be maintained, and we have an alternative plan if the government gets booted out, that will give us back our local control over our assets and a say and the prioritisation of the projects that we need done.
Okay. Joe Hayes will speak to that as well, I presume?
Yep. Yeah, I've said no to Three Waters because there are a number of issues around that. I see it as an asset grab from this government. There is no reason why they need to do that, why they just cannot fund the councils direct to be able to do their own management of their Three Waters. I will just never know. What I see also is the way that the 4 sectors have been set up, and they call it now, I think one of the council candidates said he's against co-governance. Well, I can tell you right now that iwi are against co-governance too, because it's not co-governance. Nothing is co-governance. Co-governance is a 50-50, but there is none of that happening under the new regime. Now, when the Minister, Nanaia Mahuta, got up and said that she wanted to do this, there's one issue that I have, is that because they are in government, they can drive this through, just what you're saying. They can drive it through without any further consultation, regardless of how many people are against it. And why? Because they are a majority government. You have to understand that this government is the type of government that likes to rule everything. We have the politics are all in one, the health is all in one, and they are ruling from that throne of Jacinda Ardern's government. So as people of this country, we have to be strong and hard and keep fighting back against all odds, because if we have a change of government, there will be a change of regime. Now, National said it will repeal and reverse the decision. It will depend on how far down that decision goes. So if we get to next year, around about May, it may be too late for the government to drive that through. We've got to keep fighting to hold them off so they can't get it into the House. And there's already issues happening, as Tina has been saying, but that still doesn't mean that the government can't push it through.
Thank you, Joe. Craig.
Yeah, I'm definitely against Three Waters in its current form. We have to remember that originally this was sold to us as being optional. Councils could opt in and out. As soon as they realised that this policy was not favourable, they decided to mandate it, okay? This is part of just being who we are. You get so far in life by saying yes, see how far you get by saying no. We have to stand up to, I'll agree with this, big government. It's all about command and control, okay? We have to know our own local resources, and we know the best way to manage them, okay? We do need better funding, and I believe there will be a change of government. There will be a different way of looking at things. But we, as a people, as a community, as a town, we need to realise that we will get lost in the system if we don't stand up for ourselves.
Well, I'll probably take a slightly different angle. If you can imagine 3 departments in each town in New Zealand, and say you've got a $500 water bill or a $200 water bill, it'll probably be a $2,000 to $3,000 water bill. So if we want to have independent organisations of each part of Three Waters, then we'll just end up with more bureaucracy out of control. I put on social media the other day that the cost of inflation or the rate increase is doubling every 10 years. If we lock into this Three Waters, it will actually be double that again. It'll be probably doubling every 5 years, if you follow my logic. Anyway, have a night. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got a question from a candidate. Yep.
I'll use the mic because you can't hear me.
Okay, all right.
I have got a question. Just for the record, I'm against Three Waters. To me, it's a national...
Yeah, just after the question though. Just after the question.
I will.
Good.
Thanks.
Good.
The question I have for the mayoral candidates, and I apologise that I have my back to you while I'm asking this question, is when you're at a council meeting as mayor and you have a major decision to be made by the council and you have a split council, you have 5 for and 5 against, or 4 for and 4 against in the new council, are you going to vote for the status quo, or will you go for the risky side of the decision?
Status quo change. Good question.
Good question, Harrison. I'm of the opinion that I would go with the status quo. I believe if you have a split council, it shows that the current mayor to be, is probably, to use a sporting analogy, lost the changing room, okay? I think any decision to be made needs to be more than 50-50. You know, you need to have a 75% people in favour of this moving forward. So mine would be for the status quo. Thank you.
Okay. Joe? You can just yes or no from there if you want, but you know, I want to explain.
For me, it would depend on what the question was, actually, and I would make that decision there based on what the discussion is all about. It would be to make sure that the people of Masterton actually were heard and that we carried their decision through into council is how I would vote.
I think this is one of those things when I said we need to start looking at the way we do things differently, and this is as a classic example for me. So what we have is a council system where you go into a workshop and you coalesce and talk about stuff, and everyone gets a fair idea where everyone's going to land. You don't take a vote. And and a lot of times it's in secret, as people say, and it's not for public, and I've never been in favour of that. In fact, we've opened up some workshops on the back of what I've said. So then you go to a council meeting and you have very little time to actually tease through the issues. And I think there's a step in the middle somewhere. And I think this is one of those years where we can tease out some new processes. And I would really like to see us do more of what you do around the board table, which is keep working on it till we get to where we need to go. And so there's a lot more consensus comes out around the board table. And you don't get this sort of huge big split like you do in councils where everyone takes their positions. And I think it's simply because the conversation that is so structured that it doesn't actually allow for good dialogue. What it allows for is grandstanding. And that doesn't get us to where we really need to go. And so I suppose I bring my background from sitting around board meetings and discussing big loans and what we're going to do next and what venture we're going to invest in, and really talking it through. And I think that would also gain a lot more credibility from the public, because they'll see us actually working through some of those issues. It might take us a bit longer on some of those things, and you'd only do it for some of those really, really big issues. And we definitely need to open the workshops up. I've always been a fan of making sure that people see how we make decisions. And at the moment, you're not really seeing a really good process, because it's not a good process. So, as I said, this year is the year for us saying no. It's saying let's try something different. We don't have to play by the rules. Christchurch has just taught us that. They had a huge, big thing come down from government saying you're going to have to build houses here of this height, and Christchurch says no. And you know what happens normally when that happens? They bring in commissioners, or they bring in an agent who has to drive that change, and the government's backed off. Because I think it knows that the local government system is so broken that when a local organisation like a council has government stuff that's imposed on them, then they have the right to say no. So, I mean, it's going to be a really nice thing to test, but yeah, let's try and see if we can act more like a board and a business, and let the community see our decision making, and let's have more conversations. And the same with the public forum. We give people 3 minutes and we're only allowed to ask questions. We're not even allowed to have a dialogue. Why? Because that's the rules. Who says? Don't know, but let's change that too.
So what was the question again?
Well, the question was, the initial question, and I think it's an excellent question, you've sparked a discussion that isn't just being had here in Masterton, but all over the country about the functionality of councils and councillors and how they get on. It's a really good issue. So the question is, if you were mayor and there was a split decision in council, and hypothetically speaking, you could vote for a change or the status quo, what would be your natural inclination with a casting vote?
That's a very interesting question. I'd probably see how the councillors, the relationship between councillors sitting on council and trusts, whether that was pertinent for that topic. So I would probably float either way, depending on what the politics were or what the implications were with the combined.
Okay, but in general terms, if it was a vote to change something or leave it as it was, would you have, and I guess the question, would you exercise that casting vote in a conservative or experimental way?
In a conservative way.
All right, okay, so that's status quo. You got a supplementary now?
I have a supplementary question.
Yeah.
I had answers from 3 of our mayoral candidates on my question, and we had some electioneering from Tina, which I enjoyed. My supplementary question is, what is Tina's view on the answer to my question?
Okay, so if it was in general terms, hypothetically, Tina, status quo or change, what is your natural inclination?
Oh, I mean, it really does. It does depend on the question and how big the issue is. But I'm not a person who's going to stand still. And if this is an issue where I think it's positive for the community, then I'm sorry, I'm going to vote for change. We need to move forward, and we need to move forward in a really positive way. And what the problem is I think that a lot of people in here who are standing for council are all coming from a really negative position. Stella's the only one who looks at life positively. Everyone else is just criticising. Well, I'm sorry, we have to get over that, and we've got too great a place here to just mire it down in negative thinking. We have to move forward.
She is electioneering again, but what do we expect? Any other questions? Yes, sir.
And that last statement from Stephen sort of struck the chord. Given the people who are standing, not for mayoralty but for the council, gives you an idea at this stage of who may be there. Do you think that you will be able to run a united council?
Absolutely. And the reason is I've been brought up in Māori politics and Māori trusts, and you have to work with a whole heap of people who get elected that you have no say over. And I work with 2 of the most successful Māori trusts in the South Island, and the reason is that I can lead those teams to come to decisions in a consensus way by being really good around the table and working through the issues. Just like I said, let's turn this on its head. Let's try something new, and let's go to what's successful out in the other parts of the community in terms of decision-making processes. So absolutely, I work with some people I do not like. But when you get around a table and you're looking to move stuff forward, you act in a professional way, and you can coalesce on issues if you can really have the time to talk them through. And as I said, I don't think councils in their current state allow that good dialogue.
All right, so the question, I just want to re-clarify the question, and that is, can you and how would you achieve unity of your council when you might not have a council that you would have ideally picked? That's really, I think, that's the question. Joe.
This is this thing called relationships. Really key to have a good relationship with all of your councillors, regardless. And I think without that, and we can talk about, the differences that happened in iwi boards and all the rest of it. We can talk about that, but at the end of the day, iwi boards have a relationship with each other. And one of the things that they also do is when they leave that room, that relationship remains strong and united. This is a relationship between each other and with their community. And that's what I can do. I can unite people to do that. God knows I was the third whip for National Party. Do you know how hard it is to get 51 people all sorted in a parliamentary house? It's very, very difficult. Putting people in places that they won't sit with each other and having to know that, yet still be able to work with all of them. So that's what I bring. I bring that, and that's my response to can I unite a maybe split council. It is about that relationship and bringing you back together. Remember, you're there because the people put you there, not because, hello, I woke up and I wanted to be at my image. The people put you there and the people will take you out. Mark my words.
Well, this is fun. My manufacturing days over the last 40 years have been employing a lot of Maori, and I've been a leader and major employer of Maori and Pakeha. I find with our factories up in Northland, we had 500 people, and up to 500 people in the later years, but we managed to get natural pride back into the factories with Maori people working in the 90s. I've had the factories I had here in Masterton in the 90s was a lot of Maori people, and most people were employed in those days, funny enough. So I always had a good relationship with both races, and there was never any conflict. So I was happy to work with, that's all part of the family. I never saw any differences. So it was just I've been a manufacturer all my life, basically, and have managed to get through in environments which normally were heavily, say, unionised and de-unionised them. So that's my ability to actually get people to represent themselves to me as a leader. So there you go.
All right.
So yes, I do believe I can get councillors to work together. For me, a lot of it is about respect. There will be new councillors come on board, councillors who have been there previously. They have a wealth of capability and experience. So it's about channeling that and bringing it to the fore and letting people realise and show their true capabilities in that. We as councillors, Mayoral, sometimes you have to leave your ego at the door and realise that you have been elected by the community to work for the community. So long as that is overarching everything we do, and we can sit back and look and say, yes, we've made the right decisions, then yes, I believe we can, as councillors, mayorals, work together for a better future. It's just a matter of working at it, working at the relationships and making sure people know that they are respected. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? Brett?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from the mayoral candidates the fact that we spend $500,000 a year as the cost of our stormwater system to the ratepayer. And to put that in scale for you, that's 4 times as much as we spend on the athletics track up the road here. Do you think that that's enough when we spend 6 and 7 million on the other waters? And why, in the last LTP, was there not even a suggestion of even putting the price up by $10? There was nothing.
Okay, so what's the question?
The question is, your LTP has 500...
No, that's not a question, that's a statement. What's the question that you want me to answer?
Why do you tolerate such low expenditure on your stormwater when it's a great time of year to raise it because everyone knows that there's bloody great puddles and everything.
So the question is, should we spend more and would you spend more on stormwater?
That's the first part. The second part is why you didn't put it in the LTP 2 years ago.
All right. Well, that's really only for people who've been incumbent, isn't it? Is everyone here is incumbent or not? So I don't know that it's fair that we have to. Tina is okay. Yeah, okay. All right.
I'm not sure whether your figures are right because.
I'm sure they are.
I'm sure a lot of your stuff isn't right. But if we do have a couple of staff here, and I will go back and check that tomorrow as to whether that figure is actually correct. I think one of the issues around the stormwater renewals, as my understanding, was probably the three waters coming at us and we weren't too sure what we were going to do. But it is a valid question, Brent, and I will go back and find that out and poke it up because it does sound very light to me.
All right, so your answer is maybe we are spending too little on stormwater. Okay. The second part was what? Why didn't you vote for it? Well,
why didn't you look at it for the LTP, which is the major document of the last term?
Well, because I keep saying the LTP at the moment's not really worth the paper it's written on, and due to the changes that we've got coming up. As I said, I may have missed the fact that we've spent so little, but I'm not convinced your figures are right. I think there's some other elements to that may not be in that particular line item that go with it.
all right. Okay, anyone else want to speak to that question? Is stormwater too light? Anyone else want to answer that? Mark?
I actually agree with Tina. The figure sounds quite light considering everything that's happening at the moment. So yeah, I would personally like some clarification around the actual figure before I can.
All right, and the other two decline?
We all want to spend more on wastewater, okay?
Okay, all right. Q.
Okay, so
sorry, hang on, do your favor, and I'll take this guy, then I'll take you. Yeah, you go.
Just a personal question for Tina. All the publicity about the Civic Centre, we haven't heard your plans for a future Civic Centre tonight.
Okay. So one thing I want to get clarified is 30 million was the original cost. When I took over the committee, 30 million was the cost, right? That was the cost, it wasn't the cost to ratepayers. But there was a lot of people who were anti the Civic Centre who wanted everyone to think that that was going to be the cost to ratepayers. It wasn't. So when I went in with that Civic Centre proposal at 30 million, it was to include the library, and it was also some multi-use meeting rooms and possible exhibition space. And it was very clear that if we did put it somewhere else, which was the original Kiwi Magic or the Bridgestone site, we would have been able to sell the town hall, and remember that I voted to keep the facade in any sale, and we would have sold the library site. Another thing that a lot of people didn't know was that the agreement that we had with the Lands Trust around the sale actually included a clause in there that said if you build a multi-use civic facility, it must include a library. That was one of their provisos in the negotiations. And so, because they saw the sense in having a multi-use facility with a library in it, because there's some issues around the operational costs, it alleviates some of the operational costs, and everywhere that all our staff went to have a look at multi-use civic centres all over the place, it was very clear that they were much better operations if you had lots of things coalesced in one area. So I think one of the reasons we put the Civic Centre into review when we got to the 71 million, and to be frank, all of us were quite surprised by that figure, I would say it's probably 90 now, was that we needed to have a look at the process that got us to that. We'd had some bad information on the way through around that whole process. You will never hear me publicly condemning any of the work of staff. I won't do it. But there are some times when you don't get good information to make good decisions. And I think that there will be some reflection around how some decisions were made and how some information was handled from 2019 on, which made our life really difficult.
Sorry to interrupt, but could we just have your opinion now on what should be done with?
I actually think I still want to go back to a community plan where we actually look at all of the projects and then work out as a community what we do want to do, because there is absolutely no way at the moment that we can afford a $71 million civic facility. We really have to re-examine our entire project of work of projects.
Yeah, and I thank you, Madam, for actually clarifying the question for everyone else. What is your intent? What do you think you should do about this issue?
Back again. You might have seen some of my, I'm a bit of a movie buff, and I like putting little 30-second, 1-minute videos up on Facebook. You may have seen some of them. I'm actually saying we're actually in the middle of a recession. Rate of inflation is getting out of hand. We actually need to calm down and stop spending big chunks of money. And one of the things I proposed with the town hall is simply get the key and open it up and actually investigate why the hell they ran out of there 7 years ago, and what is the real cost of actually just strengthening it up, earthquake proof. We don't have a hall. We haven't had a hall for years. We get the key is what I'm proposing, fix it up, have public meetings, which I'm proposing, regular monthly public meetings to find out what the community really wants. And then if we want to go and spend the MAG $20 million upgrade on the town hall, well, let's do it. But let's get the hall back first. That's where I stand.
All right. Joe?
The topic of the Civic Centre, when I actually did a submission last year to the council around this and other things, but the Civic Centre, I couldn't figure out why you would want that when you did have a town hall here. And I was quite interested in the Ombudsman's report around that actually came here recently, saying that the town hall could have actually been used during its time. What I would like to see is the engineer's report around the town hall as to why we run out of it, and I want to see why you were run out of it and exactly why it was so dangerous for people to actually use. Around the Civic Centre, I liken it to new things in a house. So I think at the moment the House of Masterton is not operating properly. I think that we need to get down and we need to sort out a few of the big issues that the House of Masterton is actually coming under, some of the pressures. The pressures around the stormwater, around the sewage, down on Colombo Street and Kurapuni Street, Herbert Street, all around there, and First Street, 2nd Street. I think we need to sort those out, because people should not be using portaloos, not in this day and age, not in a time where it's not even an earthquake or an emergency situation. So, no, before I finish, so what I'm trying to say here is that for a civic centre is that we need to put that, as I say, it's one of those nice things to have, but we need to get our house in order. We need to pay for all of that order before we even start going down there, and let's, as Bill says and others have said, let's get that town hall open and operating in the interim.
All right, great.
For me, I'll just reiterate what I started with earlier on when I spoke. I'm of the opinion that we haven't had a town hall for a long time, so we need to get back and have a real discussion as to, do we want one? Okay, I am in favour, if we want one, of rebuilding on the site we currently have. Okay, to me, 6 years ago, the council was asked, should we investigate building something new? We started this process. If we'd gone back 6 years ago and decided that we were going to just build on the site, we'd already have our town hall, and it would have been at that original figure of around $20 odd million. So for me, it's just a no-brainer. We have the site. The site was actually gifted to us by the Trust Lands Trust, I believe. So let's get on, make the decision, but that decision has to also be in conjunction with the Amateur Theatre Society currently at the moment. They are looking to build a facility. We do not want 2 facilities in town that are not used very often, okay? So it's quite a discussion that needs to be had, and we have to look at this cost. There are a lot of drains on ratepayers' funds at the moment. We have to prioritise what we need versus what we want. And at the moment, wanting a town hall pales into significance with some of the things we actually do need in this town, i.e. the stormwater upgrade. Thank you.
So pretty much answered it, but maybe for ratepayers who actually end up wearing the cost, what is the budget that you'd be prepared to spend as mayor on a civic centre upgrade or new facility? And just give us a number. How much will you spend? And you can't say,
I'm not sure that any of these candidates, without more information, are in a position to put a dollar figure on it, to be honest. It's pretty
well, the figures have been bandied about. It started as 31, and there was the estimate of 50 to 70. Just want some indication, because it's what we see in these things. People say, well, it depends what we want. It depends.
Yeah, and I think what we heard in the previous article was they were all saying, let's go and figure out what we do want. So it's kind of difficult for them to say in a situation when they don't know what's going to be built, because I think almost everyone said we need to actually revisit this and have to think about it. To ask them now to come up with a figure for a completely airy-fairy proposal that isn't decided on.
No, that's a fair point. It's not like if you're planning to take a family holiday, you can say, well, we might go to New York, we might go to Pakistan, you'll have a budget as to what people can afford.
Or we'll sit down and decide where we go. And that's, I think, what I heard from most of them. Behind you, there was someone who had a question. Yes.
Good evening. My question is simple. Whilst we're seeing a lot of rain and flooding happening and other side of the world, countries burning because of extremely hot summers.
Can you just tell me which countries are burning?
Well, one of them was France, Spain, lots of them in Europe over the summer.
Okay. And you're saying so the countries were burning, or is it just unusually hot there?
Unusually hot. Just read the news and you'll find out. So why is the number one issue this evening not climate change?
Okay. All right.
Thank you for the question. I think of the candidates, I was the only one that mentioned around environment and environment planning. And climate change is part and parcel of the environment planning. And the council has already, as you have heard, put forward their climate change plan that's going forward. So I'm in to say iwi have to have an environmental plan. They have to have one in order to gain funding out of the Ministry for the Environment and the fact that we have a lot of land that will be affected by the way the climate is changing. So this is one of those things. I think it's one of those, climate change is one of those things it's happening to us now, and as a council we have to be able to do something whereby we include it in all the plans right across all sectors. Because if we don't, it's just going to, I think somebody said, it's a slow tsunami. It's going to burn us up and it's going to flood us out. And as you all know, rain doesn't pour when we need it. It pours when we don't need it. And we have to, with some of the work that's going on around water storage and the planning that's already gone on in the climate change plan. I think that we don't want that to be a book that's sat on a shelf. We want it to be able to talk to people, for farmers to use, for the council to use, for homes to actually be able to be part and parcel of changing the way that we do things in our community. So I hope that has gone some way towards answering your question around climate change. Kia ora.
During a Rotary meeting in Te Awamutu 10 years ago, I had a chap called Ken Ring, you might remember him. He believed that, yes, he believed that, you know, like a few degrees tilted angle in the earth can upset quite a lot of different climate change. Climate change is an interesting thing. I don't know if the actual word climate change actually changes anything, but we actually have to be, I think, more aware of our environment and the effects of climate on the land. And that all goes with like nutrient behaviour in farms, sewage overflows, we visit, it was a little church in Truro, this is in Cornwall. That church was built 800 years ago, 1 metre above the high tide mark. It's still there. So, you know, there's a lot of, I feel personally, there's a lot of alarmism going around this whole subject, but we've got to be tidy Kiwis at the end of the day and keep our environment clean. Thank you.
Okay, so for me, first of all, we have to address the issue. We have to admit that climate change is real. I'm not so sure about declaring an emergency. The emergency seems to be quite a PC thing to do at the moment. We've heard already tonight that the council is starting to implement its climate change policies, which is a way forward. It's all part of us doing something together. A lot of us already look at our recycling, our rubbish, and those kinds of things. So we must continue to do that, okay? It takes time, but we all need to be on the same page to do it together. Because if we don't, there is no planet B. So we have to do it, but we can't do it too quick. We got to this very quick, okay? But we need to do it slowly and work together without causing too much economic pain. I don't want to be the mayor who turns around and says to people who are struggling to put food on the table that I'm going to implement a policy that's going to take another $100 a month out of your wage packet. I'm not going to be the mayor that does that. But I will be the mayor that works with you to implement what you want. Thank you.
I didn't vote for our climate change plan because I didn't think it had the right emphasis. And for me, there needed to be a far greater emphasis on water storage. I've already talked about the fact that we're one of 2 hotspots in New Zealand. So there's Canterbury and here. And so we actually have to do something around water storage. As I said, it's not just for our economic benefit in the future, it's actually to maintain where we're at right at the moment. One of the things that was in the climate change plan was a $50,000 fund for people to look at new innovative ways of mitigating climate change effects. So I've got my wee stamp on that. The other big thing I think with climate change is that it's not. We can have plans, but we've actually got to have a bit of a rethink about getting our people to understand and do things that are actually going to make a difference. So some of our plan is around trying to change behaviours, but doing it in a way that is actually meaningful and not just virtue signalling. So yes, absolutely 100% we have to do something for climate change. But I am really, really worried around our state of water at the moment, and we do need some water storage. Now, what form that eventually takes will be really interesting, but we do need it just to maintain almost our survival.
All right.
And
one more down the back there, okay.
the The pending LGA reforms have reinvigorated the debate around amalgamation, and I noticed that hasn't come up tonight. So what I'd like to know is, if you're successful in gaining office, is it your intent to use that position to actively drive towards it, or to actively resist amalgamation?
Okay, so local body amalgamation. Okay.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
You would drive for it? Yes, you drive for amalgamation? Yes? Yes, 4 yeses. They would. There you go. That was simple. Well done.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Wensi. I'm here. I'm just want to get a question for you about the climate change. I think climate change, for personally, I think it's important to see if we care about Masterton and we care about agriculture. I think we care about water, and I'm engineer, the background engineer. So if we don't thinking properly about climate change, flooding we see in Warapa or Masterton is to do with the climate change. So this means water need to go under the ground. So this means we need our soil good. So this soil, for the soil is good, we want everyone to work together with the motherland. So this means, for me, I think climate change is a thing.
Yeah. Is there a question?
Yeah, climate thing is a thing. So how you guys going to make Masterton better for the young generation? Because young generation, how you guys going to make it better for them?
I think we've kind of covered climate change, to be honest, but has anyone got any? No? You feel like you've answered that? All right. Here.
So it's a bit more of a basic sort of question, but I'm just wondering, I'd like to hear their opinions, if it's a good idea to be spending $17 million on the aerodrome, with the $1 million a year operational costs that will come as a result of that, given that we spend only about $1 million a year at the moment on renewing sewage pipes.
All right. So the development of the aerodrome, which I think was mentioned by two of the mayoral candidates.
I'm a pilot, love the airfield, but I was surprised when I heard Lynn Patterson on a YouTube video clip a few months ago, and they were looking to, the government offered them some like $10 million for a shovel-ready project. Well, you know, my first thought would have been shovel-ready sewage pipes and water pipes would have been a good one. I won't say too much about the airport because I feel as I'm part of the airport, but I was quite happy with the airport back in the old days when I first learned to fly in 1972. It was just one big paddock, and we had no radios. So I think shovel-ready should have been in the ground.
Thank you for the question. I think I might be the only candidate up here that doesn't own a plane or has a stake in any of the plane garages up there. So I was asked to come as a representative of the iwi to discuss this kaupapa at the council with the representatives from the aerodrome. And I had talked to my board about it, and they said, for what reason would the developments, why would they want to do that? And the information that I was told was because they wanted to extend the runway so it could be another airfield should Wellington have an earthquake, and that would be another airfield other than Kapiti and Palmerston North, is what I was told. That was from Gary Goodman. Now, Gary Goodman and I used to work together at Palmerston North City Council, so I said to him, all right, okay, so what kind of planes will be able to land there? And he started telling me, and I said, and how often, and who would be in them, and how many trams would it be used, and all of those things. All of the questions that most lay people who just hop on a plane and go from point A to point B would actually ask when you're starting to spend a lot of money in an infrastructure like the airport. And that is one of the things that I said to my board. I said, I went to listen, I went to have a look at the plans, and I said, and for me, I just sat there and thought, well, for me, the jury's out. I don't know whether we should, as long as it didn't interfere with our kaupapa as iwi. I was quite happy that it wasn't going to impact on the Waingawa or any other streams around it. But for me, the whole thing was all on the back table, because I felt that having some planes land there without having the numbers to be able to justify why those planes are going to land there in the first place and how many whited upper people are actually going to use it is really key. And if you're going to spend money like that on the extension and the changes there, then you need to have those figures ready for lay people like myself who have to go and give an opinion for the iwi.
Okay, so in the interest of full disclosure, I am a pilot, I have a hangar in the field, I am on the Strategic Aerodrome Committee. I also have a contract at the aerodrome for its upkeep and maintenance. So as you can see, I'm reasonably connected to the field. So for me, the runway has to be widened, okay? Currently, Life Flight and Starship operate under quite severe restrictions as soon as it gets a little bit windy here in Masterton, and Masterton is windy. So that's part of the resilience side of this field. It was brought to the government's notice when we had the eruption at Waikari, that a lot of regional airports, their facilities are sadly lacking in the event of any form of emergency. So the government was very keen to put some money into regional airfields, okay? At the time we had COVID, and yes, the airport council, they had put together a submission to do some work there, and the government jumped in with a considerable amount of money. Okay, so that's the background behind it. I am again in favour of widening it. I personally, as a pilot, think it's long enough. Okay, there needs to be work done on business cases down there. Okay, it needs to be at the least cost neutral. It would be nice if it made money. I'm not really thinking we're going to get an airline in here anytime soon, okay? It's just not financially viable. We need to be realistic about the whole thing. That's kind of where I see it, and just that full disclosure, I'm right into the airfield, okay? So,
My disclosures even follow because the airport manager's down there and he's my partner and we have a plane. There's just one little thing around this, and I try and keep away from most of the stuff on the airport because my partner is the airport manager. But when the shovel-ready projects came up, we gave delegated authorities to the chief executive and the mayor to make a lot of decisions. And they actually made the decisions at the time as to what those shovel-ready projects were going to be. And the two shovel-ready projects were the skate park and the airport. And it comes as a bloody big surprise to most of us councillors that those were the two projects. I asked right then why we didn't have money going into stormwater, and was told it was because we didn't have a stormwater strategy. So in terms of the... So hang on, actually, Simon, it's mine. It's Simon, I'm really sorry.
Everyone's actually answered your question, to be honest, Simon.
I am about to answer it if you give me a little bit of time. So in terms of the master plan, it is absolutely imperative that we widen the runway in terms of safety. And I always think that when you end up with free money, and that's what it was, the money, the government gave us a whole heap of money, then you do the best you can with it. and you use it to optimise your future options, basically. And that's what we've done with the master plan for the airport, so that if we do lengthen the runway and aviation changes yet again, and we're seeing some amazing changes in aviation right at the moment, then we're in the pound seat for an airline to come back. So at the end of the day, it didn't actually cost the ratepayers as much as everyone's trying to make out, because there was so much money given to us from government. It's not easy, and the costs will blow out, like everything else. But let's be realistic. When government comes along and gives you a whole lot of money, you do the best you can with it, and it's going to future-proof our airport. So I hope that answers your question, Simon.
All right, and I'll agree, Simon, some of those answers were ambiguous. But, you know, that's politics, you know.
Yes or no?
Well, do you think it's a good idea? I think everyone said I don't know about it to reach that decision. Look, I know there's one person wanting a question at the back, but we are rapidly running out of time. Yep. So, look, we are almost out of time, so I'm going to have to make...
No, just about my question. I just want to ask about the water storage. I mean, not so long ago we were talking about the Wakamoto Dam, which has now been put on off the table. Is that going to be put back on the table again as a water storage plan again?
It's off the table, sort of, at the moment. But, well, yeah, I don't know how I can actually describe that. It's been put in abeyance because we haven't got a consenting pathway for it. Basically, as soon as you try and build a dam and you go anywhere near a riverbed, you can't do anything. So you can't build a dam. But there is lots of changes going through government at the moment that are backing up the case for water storage. So if there is a change in government, I think that could actually be revisited, and I think there is also an acknowledgement that there may be other ways of looking at water storage, because there's new information coming on board all the time. So that's as much as I can tell you.
Can I just ask then, is that dependent on iwi agreement, whether that project still goes ahead?
I would say absolutely, because we have a thing called Te Mana o Te Wai, which is about the sanctity of water, which only iwi is allowed to have a say in. And so I suspect that actually that will have an impact on any water storage. And so those are some issues when the community starts to understand the implications of that, and in terms of ongoing projects, may not be comfortable conversations.
All right. Look, I just want to clarify from you guys. I know that candidate Lynn Patterson isn't here. Is there anyone else running for mayor who isn't here tonight?
Yeah.
And he's still running. Okay, someone asked me that question. So we are going to wrap up. We're going to wrap up with the 4 people that are here with a very simple question. If for whatever reason, or through an act of God, whatever you define him to be, you couldn't run for mayor, who of the other candidates would you vote for? It's just a name, Craig. Just tell us the name.
Through an act of God, I think it would have to be God.
No, the other candidate. Come on. If you couldn't run and you're going to vote for mayor, who would it be? Who of the other candidates would get your vote?
I honestly haven't given it any thought.
All right.
It's not something I contemplate.
Okay. All right. William?
I would say Joe.
You'd vote for Joe. Joe, who would you vote for?
I'd have to say William.
Charlotte makes a deal with that. And Tina? None? You would abstain?
Yep.
All right. Thank you for playing that game. Thank you all for coming and asking such decent questions. Gosh, problems with an airport, problems with a dysfunctional council, problems with your water. Masterton's just a little version of Wellington. We're all the same, really. Thank you for taking part. Could I